right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dharma podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. I'm your host, TW, also known as Taylor Winchester, and I am super stoked and appreciate you stopping by to tune in to this episode of Dharma. So thanks for being here. Today's conversation was a lot of fun. I'm really excited to share it with you. It's with Corri Smith, who is the founder and owner of a creative marketing agency here in Charlotte, North Carolina called Black Wednesday. If you're not familiar with her, she is just a really cool spirit, cool energy, cool vibes about her, and she is always working on something really unique and also very cool in its own right. So I'm excited for you to get to learn a little bit more about Corri if you're not already familiar with her. Our conversation discusses, of course, topics about and around marketing, but we also dig into a little bit of magic and a little bit of exchanging of energies and the cosmos and all of those things and how they apply to our day-to-day and how it kind of relates to marketing as well. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation today with Corri Smith. Corri Smith, welcome to Dharma podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Happy Sunday, as I said already prior to rolling the footage here. But I appreciate you taking time out of any day. I know you're a busy gal, so let alone a Sunday. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. My pleasure.
Yeah, well, I am stoked to catch up with you in general. I know you and I met many years ago now when we were both stomping around the grounds of the music factory, the North Carolina Music Factory. And a lot's going on with you now. Like, fast forward, that feels like it was yesterday, but also it feels like it was forever ago. Mm-hmm. And to see where you've come professionally is super inspiring, and it's awesome. And I'm proud to see all that you've become, which we'll talk a little bit about. But when I think about Corri, I think about a girl that like is in touch with everything that's going on around Charlotte that is like hip and cool. Ooh. So tell everybody that is possibly listening that is not already familiar with Corri Smith, give your own little introduction as to what you're up to these days and a little bit about Black Wednesday.
Yeah, sure. So Black Wednesday is a boutique agency. We do creative marketing, social media, PR. We used to do events pre-pandemic, email marketing, and then we consult and bring in strategic partners to build websites, do advertising, media buying, stuff like that. So that's what I'm up to for the most part. That is taking up a lot of my time. I also have a couple other projects in the works that I can't talk about yet. But I think going to your point about like trying to stay really connected with what's going on in Charlotte, I recently, at the beginning of the pandemic, worked with a friend to create a website called supportlocalorelse.com. Which is like a directory where local businesses could upload like a promotion or a way for the community to support them remotely, since at that point in time, many of them were shut down completely, if not at half capacity. So that was a fun project, and obviously made no money on it, but it was a passion project for people to be able to support local and for businesses to feel like they had some sort of support system when a lot of them hadn't yet received PPP money or monetary assistance. We wanted to drive traffic to them. I would say like Black Wednesday is my main squeeze. Support local or else. I just built a holiday gift guide on the website. So you can go to supportlocalorelse.com and click gift guide. And there's some great recommendations of local gifts to buy. Working on a couple other things. I don't know if the other things will come to life just because I think I might be delusional trying to open another business during all of this, but I also have like a very go for broke mentality. So I might do it anyway. But that's what's going on.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, it's hard to, especially as like, I consider you, although this podcast talks about like artists and creators, I consider you a very creative person and a creator, obviously from an entrepreneurial perspective. So I can totally respect the the kind of standpoint of like, I got a lot that I'm working on, but I don't want to spill the beans in case that all of a sudden shifts to something completely different, because, that's just the way the world works. So,
Yeah, and it's like you have a million things you want to do, and if you talked about all of them, people would think, well, first of all, I think that most normal people think that entrepreneurs and people with a lot of ideas and a lot of goals and a lot of dreams are crazy anyway. And so if you share too much of that, it becomes people, it's easier for people to be a little incredulous about you, your capabilities, how realistic you are, what you can actually accomplish. Whereas like, we know, like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. But I think it's like walking that line of like, do I believe I can do it? And am I ready to share it with people to give them the opportunity to really believe?
yeah.
So I'm just like working on figuring all that out.
Yeah, totally understand and relate. But I'm also glad you mentioned the support local or else. I was checking that out earlier. Really cool project. I am one of those. So we'll talk about a couple of different things that are very relative to your work, but that's a good starting place in the sense that you've long since supported local organizations, being a local business yourself. Let's talk about, did you build that website? Was that all? That's just Black Wednesday's project? Not you personally, but are you collaborating with any other organizations outside of the local folks you're supporting?
Yeah, so I did not build the
Okay.
website. I came up with the concept.
Yeah.
My friend Garrett Tichy, who owns Huga, he built the website. He knows how to do that.
Yeah.
I could do it if I had 100 hours to spend on doing it, but that's not a good use of my time. So I was actually babysitting his daughter, and I had the idea when I was like hanging out with his daughter, and he came back to pick her up, and I was like, "Hey, can you build me this website?" So he did it, and he taught me how to like maintain it.
Yeah.
So that's where when I need big picture things on the site, he builds them, and then I maintain them and build them out. So we did like a Mother's Day gift guide, and then we did the holiday gift guide. So he built the framework, and I
You'll
built
update
the
it.
stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, part of the reason I ask is because when our lives kind of cross paths again, when I was working with the ACC, and you had Black Wednesday, but y'all were stationed again at the Music Factory out of the co-working space, but we were talked very briefly about website building. And for somebody like myself who is kind of wearing all the hats and creating the website and whatever, I work off of both Wix and Squarespace, but I think other folks that maybe are creating endeavors of their own, whether it be for a full-fledged like entrepreneurial perspective or just something hobby-esque, do you have a recommendation on easy to use? What's your preference if you were telling a client, hey, why don't you start a website and use this?
Yeah, I think it's all based on their budget, but also their goals. So, like, for example, if you want something that's really beautiful and really easy to maintain, and you don't even need to do that much to it over the course of time, I would go Squarespace. They have a ton of template options, and they're really easy to populate. Again, for the most part, it's like about an investment of time. So I would go Squarespace. If your goal is to do e-commerce, I would do Shopify. Shopify has got like a lot of bells and whistles built into it. You can do email marketing through it. You can buy social ads through it. You can still create a really gorgeous website, even if e-commerce isn't the main goal, but I would recommend that it should be for Shopify if you go all in on Shopify. So I would say those are two really great and user-friendly options, also economical options to get started with.
Cool. Thanks for that. I was just curious of your perspective on that, if things have shifted since the last time you and I had that conversation, which was years ago now. So, well, getting back to kind of what this podcast is about and you being a guest on the show, I think I sent you a couple of these notes, but what do you, in a sense of what you do and work on day to day, some people may not look at marketing and kind of brand strategy and growth as a very exciting world to work in, but other people find it extremely exciting. But in a sense of purpose and day to day, how do you kind of really keep the motivation going, I guess I would say, to run an organization and such a cool, critical thing that has happened in Charlotte with what Black Wednesday does, I believe is really cool. So how do you find purpose in all that, and what kind of keeps you going on that drive, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think firstly, on our website, we say that what we're doing is marketing magic. And it's not to really scare anybody, though, like often people are deterred from working with us because we have like a weird vibe, like a mysterious out there vibe. And some people are just like not on board with that, or they read into it that we're like pagan and like they take it at face value. And we're like, no, not really. But the magic part of it is what gets me really excited, because often we're really creating something out of nothing, which is effectively magic. It's like poof and it's there, so we're building brand voice, we're building communities, we're building concepts and campaigns and stuff, and we're making things out of nothing, which I think is not only exciting, it's just really fun. And then the second thing I would say that keeps me going is that all of our clients are our partners, and I treat their business like my own. And so we have the opportunity to really build their business and to turn a concept or an idea or their restaurant into something that is profitable and successful. And we do that through brand voice and tone and the platforms that we're using, and really telling authentic stories and helping people get interested. And when they get interested, whether it's on Twitter or it's through an email or it's through a cool website or a cool graphic or whatever, that turns them into money paying customers. And that is what allows those businesses to be successful. So we're working with a restaurant right now that I certainly wouldn't take credit for their success. They have built amazing machines, but their first restaurant turned into a second restaurant, and it's going to turn into a third restaurant all within 3 years, and potentially a fourth restaurant soon after that. So that's not, again, like to take credit that marketing does all of that, because you have to hype up something that's worth hyping up. But it is to say that it is supportive to making a business more successful. And so that's really fun.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Some of the work I do falls in that similar realm, and there's one sense of enjoyment I get out of just working, as your point, like feel like partners. It's something that you take personal responsibility and obviously a business responsibility approach to it as well. But yeah, it is cool because in marketing, you have the ability to kind of cultivate whatever you want out of it. And obviously as long as it makes sense and kind of falls in that brand. Well, that's cool. And so marketing wise, social media is a big part of the marketing game for everybody these days. And I will say the whole magic and mystique of Black Wednesday, I chose to go in my black attire to match you today. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with Corri and Black Wednesday, you got to go check her own brand, the Black Wednesday brand, out and see what she's talking about there when you talk about the magic. And I love that stuff. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the magic and mystique of the infinite possibilities that fall within both marketing, but also in kind of an approach to life that I'm taking myself. But back to the social media questions I have for you. Is Twitter your platform of choice?
As like a person, human being, yes,
personally.
I love Twitter the most. Yeah. But Twitter doesn't work for every brand. It's something that we figure out based on the brand, based on the scope of work we have, based on like what we think we can do with it and what the opportunities in the market are to use it. And if it's not going to work, if the audience isn't there, if we can't translate that brand voice to Twitter and create something innovative or thoughtful, then like we might not invest in that time. But yes, from a personal perspective, it is my favorite by far.
Yeah, I kind of capture that a little bit, and that's what I was speaking more so to you personally. I think from a business approach, and give your 2 cents on this, and obviously correct me if like my perceived approach to this is not fully accurate, but Twitter seems like from a business or brand perspective a bit more time consuming in a lot of ways than maybe a Facebook or a Instagram or something of that nature, whereas personal approach to it is very, I mean, it's still time consuming, but it's like, it's very in the moment. I feel like, Instagram and Facebook, even if it's you personally, you're like, okay, what is this picture I'm going to share? I'm not just going to throw whatever up there. But on Twitter, it's very engaging and back and forth and conversational. And I've yet to really crack that code. I lurk on the Twitter and see what everybody's saying and maybe share something here or there. But I think I need to get more into it. I'm afraid of getting sucked into the conversation a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, but that's what it is. And I think that the best brands are the way that they market themselves through social media is by either starting the conversation or joining into relevant conversations that they should be participating in. So, and I think that Twitter is a really good way to do that. I think that's where like community management guidelines become super important, especially when you're doing Twitter for a brand, because you want to have some rules about what are the conversations we participate in, what are the conversations we don't, what are the conversations we start, and what are the limits on that. And who are we? What is our voice? What is our tone? Are we snarky? Are we using GIFs? Are we, going the Arby's route and roasting anyone who talks shit at us? So, but it is when you build those sort of boundaries and those guardrails, like it can be really, really fun. But I think that it's less important about pushing stuff out. It's more important to go and find the things and the people you want to talk to. And, because like it is a conversation. There's a lot of people that are like taking polls or asking questions, like where should I go for dinner? And we might have a restaurant client that can go and like wave at that person, and then they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And we've generated money there. So it's less about like using it as a promotional tool. It's more about like chiming in where it's appropriate or jumping into a conversation that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. And from your approach as Black Wednesday with your clients, are you typically guiding them? And this is probably a question that's going to be answered in two different ways. But do you typically guide them more so on somebody in-house within their brand or their organization managing those conversations? Or is that something that you're actually providing as a service with Black Wednesday as well?
Yeah, we're providing that service. It just depends on two things. One, their budget, and two, their human capital.
Mm-hmm.
So, some brands have someone that could do that. They just need some training and we can help organize a strategy and then train this person on how to implement it. Sometimes they don't have that person. And so and if they have the budget, we'll take all of that on. So for the most part, I would say like the clients where they don't have that person, we're doing everything and we're very self-sufficient. They often probably have no idea what we're doing on Twitter. But they trust us. We build a lot of trust. We present them with a strategy. They give us the okay on it and then we roll with it. And then, as like wild card things happen that we need to go back to the client and be like, hey, this is what we think we should say. And they usually are like, sure, no problem. Or they might be like, this is where we need to like toe the line or what have you. So we bring them in when we see fit, if something crazy happens.
Cool. Yeah. That's something I've always, with some of my consulting services, struggled a little bit with, because it's like I personally, especially with some of my clients being outside of the Charlotte market, so it's not as easy for me personally to be tied into the day-to-day, to be the voice of that brand on a day-to-day from an organic social media standpoint. And anyways, yeah, I was just curious on that one. So, well, that's cool. I can of course relate to the purpose of it and finding that value. And I know, based on obviously just your reputation in Charlotte and how you've grown Black Wednesday as an organization and some of the feedback that it's very apparent that your clients probably feel very similar in that way of working with you, that they get not only the value out of your product and service, but really truly a partner on the other end that's kind of helping them grow. So kudos to you on that. I can appreciate that. Let's go into segment 2, because I want to hear more about your approach to the magic outside of just your business approach, but maybe in your own lifestyle and philosophy of you personally. I don't know if you've had a chance to check out any of the initial episodes of this, but I've been going down a daily meditation practice for the last couple of months. This year has turned perspectives for a lot of people into different routes, me included. And so I'm I'm digging in on some questions about my own spirituality, my own approach to life, the greater sense of what this life is all about. And that's where the Dharma comes in. So I think it's fair to say that you've probably found your Dharma in a sense of serving others and providing these valuable business services. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your approach to life in general and kind of, I don't know if you can separate the two, the work and the personal anymore, as busy as you stay, but um, talk a little bit more about what made you go the route of kind of pulling in this tone of magic and tone of mystic within the brand of Black Wednesday.
Yeah. I think, well, for first off, like the whole brand Black Wednesday came from my personal brand was wearing all black. I think I've worn all black for like at least 8 years, maybe longer. And I wanted to build a company that other people could be excited about and proud of. And I didn't really feel like, for me, this is my personal perspective, having, Corri Smith marketing as the name, like it didn't really feel like people would feel attached or would feel ownership in that. And so I was wearing all black and I thought, I want to have black in the name. And then I was trying to think of like another word that would sort of normalize that. And Wednesday became apparent for a few different reasons. The one I'll highlight now is just that, I think you can really make anything cool if you try. And Wednesday historically has been a day of the week that no one really cares about. I mean, they talk about hump day, which is so annoying. And it's really a means to an end. It's a means of getting to Friday, the weekend, when you can relax. And for me, as someone that's just like a hustler by nature, I'm almost always working. I was like, well, we can make Wednesdays cool and on their own, as a standalone cool thing. And so we say, making Wednesdays cool since 2015, because we created this sort of cult following where people wear black on Wednesdays and they tag us on social, and it became a thing where we would do like micro marketing campaigns on Wednesdays only. Wednesdays is like the day where Black Wednesday comes alive on our own social channels. Outside of that, we're just building everybody else up. And so that's sort of where Black Wednesday came from. But I really do, I feel like, it's also dark and mysterious, and that is related to like my penchant for just like weird, different, individualistic sort of concepts and thinking. And I've sort of just always been that way. I've always been really different from a lot of people. I think differently. I live differently. My lifestyle, as you know, as an entrepreneur is sort of hard to identify with for most people. And I really enjoy letting my mind explore into weird, different places. And when you do that, you become more and more open-minded to like, is there something after life? Is there something above us during life? Is there, just like thinking about all of these different things, like does witchcraft exist? And are psychics real? And can you actually channel the dead through a seance? And it's just when you let your mind like wander freely through those ideas, the idea of magic becomes like pretty realistic. Whether you actually believe like magic can happen just from like a Miracle on 34th Street type perspective, where like there's kismet and something happens to happen, like that's something that's serendipitous, or you take it all the way of believing that you can actually conjure magic and like put a spell on someone. So there's like this whole wide spectrum that like when you let yourself explore that, yeah, there's some reality in there. And I just like really enjoy that. And then when you apply it to marketing, it's sort of like, again, like creating something out of nothing is really cool. And whether it's like real magic or like it just happened to happen magic, like that's, I don't know. So yeah, I don't really know if that answered your question, but
Yeah.
that's sort of like my approach to the magic side of things, but also like my philosophy on like how I explore those sort of different types of ideas.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing how it kind of applies in your personal life as well as how you approach the business and the marketing. Even though those two really live simultaneously at all times in your world, I'm sure you have very little separation of that entrepreneurship. But that's cool. So when we were exchanging emails, you mentioned, and to preface this question or this comment, I totally believe in magic and believe in like this. It's not like one physical thing. It's more of a spiritual, like mystic energy, magic, all these random things coming together at whatever time. And the whole communicating in the afterlife with the afterlife and stuff is really intriguing to me. We lost our dog a couple years ago now, but like we were like, this was such a random, unfortunate and unforeseen circumstance that it just felt, so we went through, it felt really, really horrible at the time, obviously, but like trying to kind of deal with that grief. We went through one of those seances with a lady that kind of, and it put, I mean, it's hard to know whether or not what they're feeling when they are kind of giving you this presentation or this vocalization of what they felt through that being's passing or whatever. But it's also, I mean, there are some really, really crazy things that she pointed out that it's like, how the hell did she know? How did she, I mean, she obviously something magically was happening, because there's no way that she pinpointed these specific characteristics without like having some type of communication, you know? So I totally believe in that stuff. But where I was going with it is, you mentioned tarot cards and tarot decks, I think,
Yeah.
which I've just recently kind of started dabbling in myself. So what's your favorite? Or do you have just like a deck with you at all times or around that you regularly draw from, or?
Yeah, so right here I have, this is funny, I just got this deck. I always use this deck at my friend's house. It's a spirit animal deck. It's from Wild Unknown, and it's not really a tarot deck, but like all decks of cards, whether they're like standard playing cards or they're tarot decks, like they all have 52 cards. Like they all stem from like this super historic, I think tarot was actually the original deck, and then it sort of over the course of time has transitioned into like modern day playing cards. They all have suits. They all have different meanings per suit. And so I always use the Wild Unknown spirit animal deck at my friend Tori's house. And so I just got my own deck. Technically, you're supposed to be gifted tarot decks, but I buy them. But I have decks everywhere. There's just some that are really artistic, like there's local makers, like people who hand make them and draw the art and stuff on Instagram that I find. And I'm like, that's a beautiful deck. Like I have an all black and white deck from Broken Isn't Bad, whom I found on Instagram. And then I just have like a River Waite deck, like the standard deck. But I love collecting different decks because I think there's like a different vibe with all of them. And they're in all different places, so I can pull whenever I want to.
That's really cool. I didn't realize you were supposed to be gifted the deck, and the deck that I have, I was gifted, which is really okay. Like cool, I got it in the right fashion. But it's a spirit animal deck too, and I've only dabbled in it, and my wife uses them, and a lot of the folks that we kind of hang around in that yoga scene tend to use them regularly too. So that's really cool.
I think it's similar to like meditation, where when you meditate, you are calling attention to something. And with the deck, it's about a question, or maybe you're having a problem. And even if the card doesn't necessarily signify anything, like let's say you draw like a random card and you don't agree with it or what have you, like it's still sitting down for a moment and thinking about with intention, like a problem or a question that you have, and it sort of calls awareness to it. So for me, it's less about the card itself. It's more about the practice of just like sitting and being with your thoughts and concerns. And I think often the card is suiting. I drew the same card 3 times in a row last week, and I thought that was like really insane because I had cleansed the deck in between each use. And I just thought that was really interesting. So then I was like, okay, I need to sit with this because there's something bigger about this. And So anyway, yeah, really interesting, like however you choose to use it, whether it's super frequently every day or just at the beginning of the month or whatever. I think there's something to just that awareness and that intentionality.
Yeah, that's interesting because the I have not used it in any type of a routine. And some of the coursework that I'm doing with this meditation training is they're very emphatic on creating a routine and like a ritual. And so you mentioned like maybe the beginning of the month or certain moons, and I know there's all these different ways to approach it, but that is I've always, not always, but it's been hard for me to kind of get into a very specific routine of like daily, this hour is when I'm going to meditate. It's usually in the mornings, and then I try to do a second one, but I don't always get to it and things like that. But do you have a typical ritual with your pulling, your tarot cards, or is that just kind of whenever you're feeling that moment of zen, of time to dig in?
Yeah, I would say early in the morning. So I usually get to the office by like 6:45 or 7. And so I'll usually like do like 45 minutes worth of work. And then before my team still won't be here by then. And so like I go around the office, I light candles, I burn incense, I start the music. Then I usually pull a card when like I have like my preliminary set of stuff done. But some days I forget or whatever. But I think when there are certain times where you have a calling to it, I think, where you're just like, I feel like I want to do this and I want to, again, have that moment of intentionality. So I wouldn't say I do it like at 7:45 every day, like clockwork. It's really about when it fits into that morning routine and when I need it.
Yeah, cool, very cool. Well, I could talk with you and like pick your brain on that for hours probably now, because I'm, like I said, I'm just really intrigued by it, and obviously starting to kind of get into it even more. But let's segue, because I don't want to take up too much of your time today. So one of the books that when I mentioned when Crosby passed away, that was like a grieving time, and both Amelia and I came across this book. Actually, a friend gifted her the book. She read it, and then I was like, well, shit, I need to read this. So it's called Many Lives, Many Masters, and it's by Brian Weiss. Don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name appropriately, but it was really cool because and it's been a year and a half or 2 years now, since over 2 years since I've read it, but he essentially like digs into, and he's a world-renowned like psychotherapist, and it's a really cool book. But the whole principle of it, I believe, is really exploring past lives and how these techniques of past life transgressions the technique is more treating past life transgressions to solve current day issues in some of his clients. And so I pulled a few quotes from that book because I think it touches a little bit on this like sense of mysticism and magic. If you or anybody that believes the slightest bit in like, past lives and reincarnation, then I think you would be drawn to it. But even if you're not, and you're the most religious of persons, you could probably take these quotes to mean something in your life. So I'm going to read a couple of them, and then I want just your feedback.
Yeah.
All right. So this first one is, and I think it can be applied not only personally, but also I think about this with you when I was reading this, specifically because of the business kind of tie in with it. But the quote is, "Wisdom is achieved very slowly. This is because intellectual knowledge, easily acquired, must be transformed into emotional or subconscious knowledge. Once transformed, the imprint is permanent. Behavioral practice is the necessary catalyst of this reaction, and without action, the concept will wither and fade." So I can apply that to a lot of things in my life, but I'd love to hear, like, does that make you think about anything with work and how you've kind of applied the practice of really gaining this knowledge and wisdom, but then also applying it and sharing it with all of the clients that you do?
Yeah, it's super applicable. I think, you're consistently learning. I think this applies to any business, but for my business and for marketing, especially as we know that whole industry continues to evolve, and as platforms change and become more available, and the web just becomes more of a playground for digital advertising and stuff like that. It's super applicable. I think I'm just consistently learning. And I think that as an entrepreneur, but specifically a marketer, you are just like, if you're not a sponge, you're not going to be successful. If you're not going to consistently seek learning and education and plan to stay open-minded and to continue to evolve and be a lifelong learner, like, you'll likely fade into the past, and so but you have to act on it like immediately. We know that, for example, TikTok has become like the super crazy app. They bought Musically, which was super popular for young kids and dancing and music and all that. And then they bought it. And so now it's become a really great marketing tool. If you have that audience, and if you have creative concept creators and you have someone that's a content creator, it can be really successful. But that's the thing where it's like, I know that, but I have to act on it. I have to figure out who our clients are that could benefit from that, and how do we make that happen if it's going to suit them. Because you can't sit on those ideas. You have to like do it. And I think, again, that applies to the business across marketing, and there's a lot of examples of that. But, and that's where it becomes really tough to be a marketer, because some things don't work. Some things could be trending and they just don't apply to the business, or you didn't do it right, or whatever. And so we have a saying around the office. This is from a business coach. He would say, success is a new mistake. Because you're just consistently fucking up all the time, whether it's like from a business perspective or marketing perspective. But, I think it's really hard to drive value to marketing, because we're not making someone a physical sandwich and selling it to them in exchange for money. It's like, it's concepts, it's campaigns, often it's digital and on the internet. And so helping people understand the value of marketing has become like a royal puzzle that it's really my job to figure out. And how do we deliver on that? And how do we learn from it? And how do we activate on new ideas quickly in order to fail quickly and move forward, or to learn and continue to evolve the brand and their marketing? I could also talk about this all day, but it's super interesting. And I think the takeaway there is like, you just have to be a lifelong learner. You have to fail fast and fail forward, and act on stuff and keep it going.
Yeah, I don't remember who or exactly what the quote is, but I remember it's very similar, but in a much shorter, fragmented way of saying it. But it was something along the lines of like, wisdom is knowledge applied. So it's the same kind of thing. And to your point, marketing itself is, especially in this day and age, is like such an agile profession, or like art, right? And you have to be ready. You have to be willing to move and also apply these things that you're learning or seeing that are potentially good solutions. And if you don't know if you don't try. So that's cool. So this next quote is still from the same book, but is a little bit more so on the personal level versus like the business approach. And I think it can be, you've already kind of touched on it with talking about the intentionality behind the cards, and kind of thinking critically, and really like taking enough time to appreciate and like take in the context of whatever that card may be telling you, right? And so this quote is, inner peace is impossible without patience. Wisdom requires patience. Spiritual growth implies the mastery of patience, and patience allows the unfolding of destiny to proceed at its own unhurried pace. So to me, to touch on, like, not to get too spiritual with it, but like the application of your time, taking somebody like yourself who's super busy and starts at 6:45 in the morning, like, how have you, if at all, seen maybe a shift, or like come to appreciate those moments of solitude, and maybe it's not silence if you're putting music on, but kind of the ritual side of things, and the patience within cultivating that ritualness, and the benefits maybe that you see within your day-to-day?
Yeah, patience is hard to come by. I think that things move really quickly in a small business. And you are often like in the weeds, and you're underwater trying to get everything done. And so patience is hard to come by, and difficult, because everything's on fire all the time, especially like now with the pandemic. So I would say, like, for me personally, I have to make space for that, because that allows me to empower my team to make space for that. Because otherwise everyone's just like burning at both ends. And so I have to lead in that way by, they'll see me pulling a card and they'll pull a card, or they'll see me saging the space and they'll realize that maybe that's something that they could benefit from, or, we'll shut the office down early and just like say, go do something for yourself, so there's different ways, but I think, filling your own cup first. And that's not to say like to be selfish, but, even on the airplane, you put your own thing on first. But you can help lead others by finding those moments. So I think that is where that importance of the ritual, but like making space for peace and patience becomes super important.
Yeah, very important. And I'm starting to find it as well, at least a more and more appreciation for it on a daily basis. But to your point, I think also, especially specifically in your situation where you do have employees and staff and people around you on a more regular basis, there's something to be said about leading by example versus telling people they should do this. And that's one of the things I've been kind of marinating on, is like, well, how do you not necessarily look at it as helping other people or telling other people what they should do to help themselves, but if you just make the space and have the patience to do the practice yourself, you're going to lead by example, and others are going to see the benefits or the way that you live your life, hopefully as inspiration to bring some of those things into their own lives. So I can certainly appreciate that. So, well, cool. Well, thanks for letting me pick your brain on some of the quotes from Brian's book. Again, that book is Many Lives, Many Masters. I'll share that in the show notes along with all of Corri's stuff. But final little segment here. You've already talked a little bit about your effort to kind of support local, but I know in years past, and I think I saw a recent tweet, you mentioned it again, we're coming up as we record this on Giving Tuesday, and I know you've supported a lot of local nonprofits. So is there anything you want to kind of touch on or share for the listeners as like a final tidbit of ways that they can either get involved to support one of the organizations that you really believe in and want to shine a light on, or just maybe kind of sharing some of the stuff that you're working on that does support those to encourage folks other ways to get involved?
Yeah. So Giving Tuesday is this Tuesday. So it's Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday being the kindest of all of those days, I think. So yeah, there's a couple of organizations I wanted to shout out. They happen to be either former or existing clients, but because we do work with nonprofits, we give them a nonprofit discount on our service. One is DigiBridge. They are a really lovely organization. They are helping bridge the digital divide that exists in Charlotte. So they do that in a lot of different ways, but basically, and the stat may be a little bit out of date, 20% of Charlotte lives without the internet. And it's bigger than just not having the internet. It might not be having the devices that these kids need to get their work done. It's, lack of internet to play games that are educational or games at all, that stretch their mind or challenge them. So not being able to watch TV, the news, like learning from any which way, So DigiBridge is doing really great work to help not only support schools that have kids in these situations through programming, or they provide devices to families in need that need to have devices at home so their kids can do their work. And then they do a lot of different like seminars and classes with kids, and the focus is on STEAM education. So like science, tech, E is for engineering, A is for arts, and M is for math. So helping kids learn how to build robots and learn those sort of like technical science related skills, because we know that especially for girls, like they're not getting that sort of education. When was the last time you met a female engineer? They're very rare and hard to come by. So they're really promoting that these kids learn these sort of mathematical science engineering type skills. So that's DigiBridge. And then Good Friends, they have their annual fundraiser event on December 10th, actually. It's called Good Friends Day. It's called a Gather and Give. So they move their annual luncheon to be a virtual event. What Good Friends does is that they provide monetary bridge gifts. They call them bridge gifts because they're anywhere from 300 to $1,000, and they go to people who are on the cusp of falling into economic despair. So, maybe they are, they owe 1 month's rent, or they need to pay one utility bill. But if they don't pay that bill, they're on the cusp of falling into a lot of trouble, economically speaking. So often when crisis runs out of money, they will point people to Good Friends to get the money that they need. So they're doing really cool stuff, and they have a fundraiser on December 10th. But I really love that they're just being like a friend to our community members that need a little bit of help. So
very cool. Two. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, and I will make sure to share links to all of their resources and stuff in the show notes. So, well, thanks again for taking some time out of your day this Sunday morning. We'll make sure this will not air before Giving Tuesday, but it will most definitely air before December 10th. So make sure that all the listeners go support your causes too. Do you want to share with where they can find you online? I will, of course, link in the show notes as well, but feel free to tell folks where the best place to find you is other than Twitter.
Yeah. So Twitter is at Corri A. Smith. And, I think everything can be found on our website. So it's blackwednesday.co.co. But yeah, you can find me there, find our clients there, all the great press we've gotten for clients if you want to learn more about them. But yes, on Twitter as well.
Cool. Thanks so much, Corri, for tuning in or for being here. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and we'll chat with you again next week. Cheers.